Have you ever felt like you were being watched, even when you were completely alone? That creeping sensation that makes the hair on the back of your neck stand up, the feeling that someone, or something, is right behind you, but when you turn around, there's nothing there? I used to think those feelings were just products of an overactive imagination. But after what happened to me during my night shifts at the Twilight gas station, I know better. I know that sometimes the watchers are real, and sometimes they're not of this world. My name is Jake, and I'm about to tell you a story that will make you question everything you think you know about reality. A tale of terror, mystery, and unexpected allies from beyond the grave. But before I begin, let me warn you, once you hear this story, you can never unhear it. You'll never look at a gas station the same way again. And you might start paying closer attention to those shadows in the corner of your eye. If you're brave enough to continue, make sure you're not alone. And if you want to hear more stories like this, stories that will keep you up at night and make you question the very nature of our world, hit that subscribe button. Because trust me, there are more horrors out there than you can imagine, and I'm just getting started. Now, let me take you back to that fateful night when I first met the ghost of Twilight gas station, and the dark secrets it was trying to reveal. The story then continues with, I was just an average college student looking for a part-time job when I landed a night shift position at a local gas station. I thought it would be an easy gig, sit around all night, serve the occasional customer, and study in between. Little did I know that this job would lead me into a darkness from which I might never return. My name is Jake, and I'm about to share with you a story that will forever alter the course of my life. At the time, I regarded myself as just an average college student, someone juggling classes, assignments, and the usual chaos of young adulthood. I was in search of a part-time job, something that would fit around my hectic schedule and provide a little extra spending money. After a few applications and several rejections, I found an opening at a local gas station and eagerly accepted a night shift position. Initially, I thought it would be a straightforward gig, an easy way to earn some cash. My plan was to sit around all night, meet the occasional customer, and steal some study time in between. The work seemed simple enough. I would be responsible for keeping the station open, ringing up sales, and ensuring the pumps were filled with gas. Little did I know that this seemingly harmless job would lead me down a path filled with shadows and uncertainties, into a darkness from which I might never return. The first night on the job began as unremarkably as I had anticipated. I showed up at 11 p.m., the smell of fresh asphalt and gasoline mingling in the cool night air. A sense of calm washed over me as I entered the small building, greeted only by the familiar beep of the gas pump registers. The day shift worker was there to give me the rundown of my responsibilities, providing me with a crash course on how to handle the register, important safety procedures, and, most importantly, the ins and outs of managing the nighttime clientele, an eclectic mix that he claimed could range from friendly truckers to more questionable characters. Once the shift handover was done, I was officially on my own. As I glanced around the gas station, I took in the details. It was a modest structure with 4 pumps out front, all illuminated by flickering fluorescent lights. Inside, there was a counter enabling me to view the entire place. On the right, shelves overflowed with snacks and drinks, everything from sweet treats to caffeinated beverages, perfect for those long drives or late-night cravings. Tucked in the back was a tiny restroom, too cramped for much more than a quick pit stop. Behind the building, concealed under the cover of night, was a storage room stocked with extra supplies, though it felt more like a forgotten corner of the world than a functional workspace. At first, my night was uneventful, allowing me plenty of time to organize the stock, mentally review my coursework, and even indulge in a few puffs from the cigarette I had picked up recently, my own late-night guilty pleasure. The occasional car would pull up to the pumps, and I would step outside, flash a smile, and go about my duties with enthusiasm. But as the clock ticked forward, a creeping sense of isolation began to settle over me. The silence of the night enveloped the gas station, interrupted only by the occasional whoosh of an air pump or the distant roar of a car speeding along the highway. Then, just past midnight, things began to take a darker turn. A sleek, black car rolled into the station and parked by the far pump. I noticed that it didn't seem like a typical customer. That's when my heart began to race as I felt the first unsettling stirrings of anxiety. The driver, the only occupant, stepped out, clad in a long trench coat, with a hood pulled up over their head. I couldn't see their face well, but something about their presence sent a chill down my spine. This wasn't just a late-night vehicle refueling. This was the beginning of an unraveling that would lead me into territories I was entirely unprepared to navigate. As the minutes dragged on, my instincts told me to be cautious. I stood at the counter, waiting, trying to remain calm and not let my unease show. With each tick of the clock, I began to dread what the night might still have in store for me, unknowingly stepping into a situation that would test every facet of my character, pushing me beyond my limits and into a realm of uncertainty that would forever change who I was and how I perceived the world around me. Everything was fine until about 1 a.m. The clock on the wall ticked steadily, its rhythmic sound blending with the low hum of the fluorescent lights overhead. A few people had come and gone throughout the night, each one filling up their tanks with gas or stepping inside the small convenience store to grab cigarettes and snacks. The occasional jingle of the door's bell would break the monotony of the night, a tiny reminder that life continued out there beyond the glass walls of the gas station. I was nestled in a corner of the store, comfortably absorbed in my biology textbook, the fluorescent lights casting a harsh glare on the pages. The diagrams and scientific terms seemed to blur together as my eyelids began to droop in response to the late hour. Just as I was about to turn a page, a prickling sensation crept up my spine, the uncanny feeling that I was being watched. I hesitated, my eyes drifting away from the stiff pages of the book, and I glanced up. That's when I noticed him. A man was standing just outside the large window, framed by the dim glow of the gas station lights. He was unmoving, his gaze intense and penetrating as he stared directly at me. My breath caught in my throat. There was something profoundly unsettling about his eyes. They were deep and dark, like looking into an abyss, devoid of warmth or emotion. In that moment, they seemed to pull me in, making it hard to look away. Feeling a mix of curiosity and deep unease, I instinctively waved, hoping to break the tension that had materialized in the space between us. Perhaps he needed directions or help with something. But he didn't respond to my gesture. He remained there, an immovable presence, simply watching me as if I were the only thing that mattered in his world at that very moment. Then, in an instant, he was gone. One moment he was there, and the next, nothing. The space outside the window was empty, the shadows where he had stood yawning wider in his absence. My heart began to race, pounding loudly in my chest like a drum echoing in an empty hall. Confusion and fear flooded my senses, and I tried to rationalize what had just happened. I told myself I was just tired, that my eyes were playing tricks on me. Maybe it was the late hour, or the boredom of a long shift affecting my perception. But as I looked down at my textbook, the words seemed to swim before my eyes, and the unsettling image of the man's stare lingered in my mind. I could still feel the weight of his gaze, and the darkness of those eyes haunted me, a chill of dread creeping up my spine. I shook my head, trying to clear it of these spiraling thoughts. It was just a trick of the light, I reassured myself. The night was long and strange, but I had a job to do and a textbook to finish. I forced myself to focus, but the uneasy feeling stayed lodged deep within me, refusing to let go. A little while later, A truck pulled up outside the convenience store, its engine rumbling like a low growl in the stillness of the night. A guy, maybe in his 30s, leaped out of the cab, his silhouette illuminated under the harsh fluorescent lights. He made his way to the gas pump, filling up his truck with a quick efficiency. I watched him through the glass doors, readying for a short escape from my solitude, when he turned and strode toward me, his hands rubbing together as if to shake off the chill. "Hey there," he greeted as he pushed through the automatic door, a friendly tone in his voice. He ambled over to the counter, glancing around at the products before settling on a pack of cigarettes. As we chatted, the usual banter about the weather, his long haul from Texas, and my late shift, I felt that unsettling sensation wash over me again. It was the same feeling I had earlier, that prickling awareness that someone was watching me. Glancing around the store, I scanned the dim corners filled with flickering shadows and the low hum of the neon signs. My heart raced as I noticed him again, the man outside the window. He stood there, as if he had emerged straight from the darkness, and this time he was smiling. It was a wide grin that did nothing to reassure me. Instead, it sent a chill racing down my spine. The smile was too broad, almost caricature-like, with an unsettling familiarity that reverberated deep within my gut. "What's wrong?" the truck driver asked, noting the sudden change in my demeanor, his brow furrowed in concern. "Can you see that man?" I blurted out, my finger pointing nervously towards the window, my voice barely above a whisper. The truck driver turned to look where I directed, peering beyond the glass. He squinted into the night, scanning the empty lot that surrounded us, and then turned back to me, confusion etched across his face. "What man?" "There's nobody there," he replied, his voice lacking the urgency I felt. When I looked again, my heart sank. The man was gone, vanished into thin air, as if he had never been there at all. My mind spun in a chaotic dance while I fought against the rising tide of dread that threatened to engulf me. Why was I seeing things? Was I losing my grip on reality? The truck driver finished with his purchase and left, the door chiming shut behind him, and just like that, the ever-present hush of the store returned, amplified by my isolation. The silence grew heavier, and every creak of the floorboards and distant echo of a passing car made me jump, suddenly hyper-aware of how vulnerable I was. In a moment fueled by frustration, I pulled my phone from my pocket and called my boss. My voice trembled as I recounted the strange occurrences of the night, desperately searching for reassurance, but his response felt like a punch to the gut. "If you're scared, maybe this job isn't for you," he said dismissively. His words ignited something inside me, a fierce determination that flared against the fear. I wasn't going to run away from this. I would stand my ground, face whatever was haunting me. As the clock ticked toward 3 a.m., I sought a moment of reprieve in the restroom. The small space felt cramped, echoing with the sound of dripping water as I washed my hands, splashes of cold water providing the only sensation to ground me. Just as I turned off the faucet, a sound rippled through the stillness, a gentle but persistent tugging at the door handle, as though someone was trying to get in. My heart thundered in my chest as I froze, turning towards the door, the fluorescent lights buzzing overhead. I stepped closer, my breath quickening. I swung around and looked back. The door remained firmly shut, offering no signs of intrusion. Yet that eerie feeling thrummed within me again, a shadow creeping along the edges of my consciousness. I glanced into the mirror, seeking a semblance of normalcy when I saw him. The man stood behind me, his presence looming large in the confined space. His eyes were now completely black, devoid of any warmth or humanity, like dark voids that swallowed all light. His mouth twisted, forming that unnatural smile that widened as our gazes locked, It was a look that promised nothing but malice. Panic surged through me, and I turned rapidly, adrenaline coursing through my veins. But the restroom was empty. The stranger was gone. My breaths came in quick gasps, and I stumbled back against the sink, trying to process what I had just seen. What was real? What was merely a trick of the mind? I clutched the edges of the sink, my thoughts racing, as I tried to make sense of the nightmare that was quickly consuming my reality. I screamed and spun around, my breath catching in my throat as I felt the icy grip of fear clutch at my insides. But there was no one there, just the flickering fluorescent lights above and the dull hum of the ventilation system. My heart was pounding so hard against my ribcage that I thought it might burst out of my chest like a caged animal desperate for escape. Each beat reverberated in my ears, drowning out the eerie silence that surrounded me. I tried to get out of the restroom quickly, my mind racing with the desperate urge to put distance between me and whatever I had just encountered. My trembling hands reached for the door handle, but to my horror, the door wouldn't budge. Panic surged within me as I pressed my shoulder against the cold metal, pushing and pulling with all my strength. I pounded on the door, yelling for help, my voice cracking and echoing in the small, enclosed space. But no one came. Then, just as abruptly as it had begun, everything went quiet. A thick silence enveloped me, so profound that I could hear my own ragged breathing. For a moment, it felt as if time had stopped, and I was suspended in a liminal space between reality and fear. Suddenly, the door creaked open on its hinges, releasing me from my confinement. I stumbled out, disoriented and gasping for air. The gas station was exactly as I had left it, unchanged and utterly mundane. The flickering lights blinked above the rows of snacks and cold drinks. The floor held a faint shine from the recent cleaning, and the faint whiff of gasoline lingered in the air. There were no signs of the terror I had felt moments before. No voices, no shadowy figures lurking in the corners. No one was there, just an empty space that no longer seemed to hold any threat. Despite the normalcy of my surroundings, a chill ran down my spine. I knew what I had seen was real. The vivid image of the dark figure flashed through my mind like a haunting photograph. I could almost feel its presence lingering in the air, as if it had left a piece of itself behind, waiting just beyond the edge of sight. My pulse raced as I scanned the empty aisles, half expecting to see a shadow moving from the corner of my eye, but nothing stirred. As the seconds stretched into an eternity, I felt a nagging sense of dread settle in my chest. This was not just a trick of the light or a figment of my imagination. Something had occurred in that restroom, something I could not explain. I took a deep breath, trying to steady the tremors of unease shivering through me, and slowly made my way to the entrance. The familiar sound of the gas station door jingling as it opened was almost reassuring. But the memory of that unfathomable moment loomed over me like a storm cloud ready to break. Would I ever truly leave it behind? Would I dare return? The next night, I came back for my shift. This time, I brought a small knife, just in case. The night started normally, but I felt like I was being watched every second. Every time I turned around, I felt like someone had just ducked out of sight. At 2 a.m., a customer came in. It was a woman, maybe in her early 30s. She filled up her car and came inside to buy some stuff. When she got to the counter, she asked, "Are you okay? You look really stressed." I told her I was feeling a bit nervous but didn't explain why. She seemed sympathetic and said she'd be scared too if she were in my place. Then she said, "By the way, who's that man standing behind you?" My heart stopped. I slowly turned around, and there he was, the man with the deep black eyes and that terrifying smile. This time, he was reaching out, as if trying to grab me. I yelled and jumped back. The woman screamed too. But when we looked again, there was no one there. You saw him? I asked, panting. The woman nodded, her face pale. What was that? I hesitated for a moment, the gravity of my thoughts weighing heavily on my chest. I think I've been seeing someone, I finally admitted, my voice barely above a whisper. My heart raced as I recounted the eerie encounters, the feeling of being watched. It felt surreal, so unreal, yet I couldn't shake the overwhelming conviction that the figure was real and not a figment of my overactive imagination. Emily's eyes widened, a mix of concern and fear crossing her features, prompting me to delve deeper into the unsettling experiences of the past few days. I've seen him lurking everywhere, I continued, desperation threading through my words. I don't know who he is, but he's always just there, watching. As I spoke, I could see her digesting the information. Then, with a sense of urgency, she took out her phone and gave me her number, urging me to reach out if I ever felt overwhelmed or frightened. Just call me, she insisted. If you need help, I won't hesitate to come. Her name was Emily, a simple, ordinary name, yet it felt reassuring in the chaos that was spiraling around me. I clung to the thought that I wasn't alone in this, that someone out there cared enough to offer support. The next few nights unfolded in an unsettling pattern. Despite the bright lights of the gas station illuminating the surroundings, I felt engulfed by shadows. Every noise, the rustle of plastic bags, the hum of fluorescent lights, even the distance. My blood ran cold when I heard this. My heart raced as the memories flooded back, images of Tom's smiling face juxtaposed against the fear and chaos of that fateful night. Was this Tom that I was seeing, or was my mind playing tricks on me? But why would he appear now? Was he trying to tell me something? My pulse quickened, a mixture of dread and hope coursing through me. One night, when I was alone in the dimly lit cafe that had once been our favorite hangout, I decided to reach out, hoping for some semblance of connection to the past. Tom, I said, my voice trembling, if you're here, please tell me what you want. The silence that followed felt thick and oppressive, as if the very air around me was holding its breath. For a while, nothing happened. The cafe, usually filled with the comforting sounds of steaming espresso and soft chatter, was eerily quiet. I leaned back, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing with questions and doubts. Just as I was about to give up hope, suddenly, the lights began to flicker erratically, casting long shadows that danced along the walls. The temperature dropped sharply, wrapping me in an icy grasp that raised goosebumps across my skin. Then, without warning, a whisper found its way into my ear, so faint and yet so urgent. Save, I looked around, my heart pounding in my ears, but there was no one to be seen. The cafe felt impossibly empty, the kind of emptiness that gnawed at the soul. Save who? I managed to ask, my voice barely above a whisper, filled with a mix of fear and desperation. Another whisper, this time more insistent. He's coming back. Just then, the doorbell jingled, slicing through the tension like a knife. My breath caught in my throat as a man walked in, his face obscured by a low-hanging hood. My stomach twisted as I caught a glimpse of something glinting in his hand, a knife. My whole body froze, adrenaline coursing through my veins. Was this the same killer from 20 years ago? The man who had turned my life upside down and taken so much from me? The thought sent a wave of nausea crashing over me, and I gripped the small kitchen knife I had brought with me for protection, my knuckles turning white. The man advanced towards the counter, his gait casual but his intentions unmistakably violent. "Open the cash register," he demanded, his voice rough and commanding. I raised my trembling hands, trying to project calm even though panic threatened to consume me. "Okay," I'm opening it. Just stay calm, I replied, hoping to without thinking. I grabbed my knife and swung at the man. He yelled and stumbled back. His hood fell off, and I could see his face. He was just a kid, maybe 18 or 19. Please, he said, crying. They made me do it. My dealer. He said he'd kill me if I didn't. I was panting, my mind reeling. Was this real? Or was it another trick? Then I heard Tom's voice again. Look. I turned around and saw another man outside the window, holding a gun. The dealer. Without hesitation, I pulled the young guy down, just as a gunshot shattered the window. I quickly dialed 911 on my phone. The next 10 minutes were chaos. The police arrived, arrested the dealer and the young guy. They took my statement and then told me to go home. As I sat in my car, the engine idling softly beneath me, a chill ran down my spine. The night air was thick with anticipation as I heard Tom's voice one last time echoing in my mind. Thank you. It was a simple phrase, but in that moment, it bore the weight of all his unresolved history, a history woven into the very fabric of that gas station where we had shared moments both mundane and bizarre. After that fateful day, I never saw Tom again. The strange occurrences that had seemed to envelop that place like a haunting fog dissipated almost instantly, leaving behind an unsettling silence. Maybe Tom had finally gotten what he needed, justice for his untimely death at the hands of those who believed their secrets were safe, or perhaps it was simply the chance to help someone like me, trapped in a mystery that had long eclipsed his own story. Emily, who had shared my obsession with uncovering the truth, told me she had dived deep into research regarding Tom's past. She dug through old police reports and newspaper clippings, revealing dark undercurrents in our town's history that I had been blissfully unaware of until then. There had been a drug ring active in the area when Tom was murdered, a nefarious operation that had seemed to flourish in the shadows. Maybe Tom witnessed something he shouldn't have, she speculated, her brow furrowing with concern. That could explain why he was killed. Now, 2 decades later, it appeared that the same players, the same dangerous men, were reasserting their influence, their shadows stretching once more across the streets I thought I knew so well. I don't work at that gas station anymore. I remember the day I decided to leave. It was as if a weight had been lifted from my shoulders. Yet, even now, when I drive by, a mixture of nostalgia and dread fills my chest. Each time, I can't help but glance at the old building with its cracked windows and flickering neon sign. It stands there, almost like a sentinel, vigilant and watchful. Those days spent behind the counter seem like a different lifetime, but sometimes, when I pass by, I feel that familiar sensation, a pricking at the nape of my neck, an instinctive awareness that I'm not alone. And then, for just a fleeting moment, I catch a glimpse of something in the window. A figure, vague and shimmering like heat rising off asphalt, gives me a small nod. It's a gesture filled with both familiarity and uncertainty, an acknowledgement that lingers in the air. In that instant, I'm reminded that the boundary between this world and the next is thinner than we think, a fragile veil that can be breached by those seeking closure or perhaps just a friend willing to listen to their story. As I drive on, I can't help but wonder if Tom is still watching, still reaching out from beyond the veil, helping to shed light on the darkness that resurfaced. It's a nagging thought, one that fuels my determination to uncover the truth, to advocate for the lost, like Tom, who once lived and breathed but whose voices are forever trapped in the echoes of the past. I grip the steering wheel a bit tighter, my resolve strengthening with each passing mile. There's a story that still needs telling, and I feel it in my bones. This is far from over. If you ever find yourself working the night shift at a gas station, remember, this job can be as mundane as it is unpredictable. You'll serve countless weary travelers in need of fuel, snacks, or simply a moment of warmth and light in the dead of night. But beneath the routine, a darker undercurrent flows through those quiet hours. Not all customers are living, and not all threats are visible. Stay safe out there. I don't work at that gas station anymore, but the memories linger like an echo, haunting me as I navigate through life. I often find myself driving past that familiar spot, and an unsettling feeling creeps in, as if the shadows are reaching out to connect with me once more. Each time I pass, I sense an eerie gaze upon me, a feeling that I'm not alone. And for just a fleeting moment, my mind plays tricks, conjuring the image of a figure standing just inside the glass. They give a subtle nod, an almost imperceptible acknowledgement that feels both comforting and disquieting. This ghostly figure is an unsettling reminder that sometimes the line between this world and the next, what we can see and what lurks in the unknown, is thinner than we ever imagined. The gas station is more than just a place to refuel. It's a crossroads, a portal where the living and the departed brush against one another in an invisible dance. The stillness of night can stir spirits from the past, and echoes of forgotten lives linger in the air. As I continue to drive by, I often ponder the stories that went untold, those fleeting interactions with customers who seemed to carry an unseen weight. Was it just exhaustion that clouded their eyes, or was there something deeper, something that transcended our plane of existence? Questions swirl in my mind like smoke from a dying ember, and I wonder if their nod was not just a simple acknowledgement, but a deeper connection, a silent warning, or an invitation to remember. So if you ever find yourself working the night shift at a gas station, be vigilant. Your senses may deceive you, but trust your instincts. Sometimes, it's the unexplainable feelings and unseen threats that guard your safety. Stay aware of your surroundings and prepared for the unexpected. In the realm of night, the boundaries blur, and the ordinary transforms into the extraordinary. Embrace the mystery, but be mindful, for you never know who or what might be watching. Stay safe out there. But here's the thing that keeps me up at night, the reason I still can't shake off what happened at Twilight gas station. Last week, in the stillness of a Tuesday evening, I received a text from an unknown number. The gray lighting of my dimly lit room illuminated my phone as I hesitated to open the message, curiosity battling with the unease that snaked through my body. When I finally did, my heart dropped. It was a picture of me, captured in that moment of new beginnings, sitting at my desk in the library, surrounded by stacks of dusty books and the comforting aroma of parchment. But there was something deeply unsettling about the image. It had been taken from outside the window, a vantage point where I had no idea I was being watched. Beneath the photograph, a message that made my blood run cold scrolled across the screen, its cruel simplicity sending chills down my spine. "We're not done yet, Jake. Tom can't protect you forever." My mind raced back to that tumultuous night at Twilight gas station, the place where everything changed, where I first encountered the man with the black eyes whose presence haunted my thoughts. I could feel the weight of dread settling on my shoulders as I looked up from my phone, the sharp buzzing of anxiety reverberating in my ears. My heart pounded in my chest like a relentless drum. That feeling of being watched, the sensation that had clung to me ever since that night, had returned with a vengeance. My eyes darted to the window, and to my horror, there he was, the man with the black eyes, standing motionless across the street, cloaked in the shadows of the late afternoon. He was smiling that terrible, knowing smile, the kind that twists your stomach into knots and lets you know that evil can wear a face like your own. But this time, he wasn't alone. Beside him stood two more figures, their features obscured by the dim light and the encroaching twilight. They were hooded, their postures relaxed yet intimidating, as though they belonged to a world I had managed to escape, not entirely unscathed but free, at least for the moment. The trio made an unsettling picture, a dark omen in the waning daylight. I felt a surge of panic flush my face. My breath quickened as I fumbled for my keys, ready to bolt from the safety of the library. In that moment, I understood. I couldn't hide anymore. They were out there, waiting for me to slip, to show a moment of weakness. I detected the quiet menace in their gaze, the hunger that seemed to pulse through the air. They were toying with me, playing a game where the stakes were terrifyingly high. And I was just the pawn, caught in a deeply unsettling game of cat and mouse in a town that had turned from my haven into a sinister playground. I glanced at Tom's office, where he often sat engrossed in his own world, oblivious to the darkness creeping around the corners of my life. I knew he would do everything in his power to keep me safe, but how far could his protection stretch? This wasn't just about me anymore. This was about something larger, something darker that had been awakened and was now circling ever closer. Deep breaths, I thought, gripping my phone tightly as I tried to steel myself against the approaching dread. There would be no running from this. I was going to have to confront whatever demons had been unleashed that fateful night at Twilight gas station. As I watched in horror, more figures emerged from the shadows behind him. Dozens of them, their eyes all fixed on me, their mouths twisted into those unnatural grins. And I realized with a sickening certainty that my nightmare was far from over. It was just beginning.